What if the biggest crack in the West's united front against Russia didn't come from politics, but from money? Not tanks, not missiles, not even diplomacy, but from a decision about who gets to touch frozen billions sitting quietly inside Europe's financial system. For months, the narrative was simple. Ukraine needs funding, Russia caused the destruction, and Russian money should help pay the bill. It sounded logical, even moral. But now, one of the world's most important allies has said no. Japan has flatly rejected Europe's plan to use frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. And that single refusal has exposed something far bigger than a legal disagreement. It has revealed deep fractures inside the G7, quiet resistance from Washington, and a growing divide over how far the West is really willing to go in rewriting the rules of global finance. And that's what we're unpacking today. At the heart of this story is a bold European gamble. Since the early days of the war in Ukraine, Western governments froze hundreds of billions of dollars belonging to the Russian state. These weren't oligarch yachts or private bank accounts. These were sovereign assets, central bank reserves, traditionally treated as untouchable under international law. As the war dragged on and costs ballooned, Europe began asking a harder question. Why should taxpayers foot the bill while Russian money sits idle? The answer, at least from Brussels, was to put those assets to work. The European Union proposed using frozen Russian funds, or at minimum the interest they generate, to support Ukraine's defense and long-term reconstruction. The numbers are enormous. Roughly 210 billion euros in Russian assets are held within the EU, with the vast majority parked in Belgium through the financial services firm Euroclear. On paper, the plan looked elegant. Russia invades, Russia pays, Ukraine survives. But in practice, it opened a legal, financial, and geopolitical minefield. Here's where the first major complication emerges. If Europe seizes or reallocates these assets and Russia later wins a legal challenge or retaliates, someone has to bear the risk. And because most of the money sits in Belgium, that someone is Belgium. That's why European leaders didn't want to act alone. They wanted the G7, the United States, Japan, Canada, and others to share the liability and present a united front. A collective move would dilute risk and send a powerful message to Moscow. And this is where the plan began to unravel. At a recent meeting of G7 finance ministers, Japan quietly but firmly refused to participate. Tokyo cited legal constraints, arguing that repurposing sovereign assets without a clear international legal framework crosses a dangerous line. Under Japanese law, the move would be extremely difficult to justify and potentially unconstitutional. But legal explanations only tell part of the story. Japan is not just another G7 member. It is a cornerstone ally of the United States, deeply embedded in the American security umbrella. And according to multiple diplomatic sources, Japan's decision closely mirrors Washington's own discomfort with the plan. In other words, Japan didn't just say no to Europe. It echoed the hesitation coming from the White House. The United States, despite being Ukraine's largest supporter in military and financial terms, has been notably cautious about touching Russian sovereign assets. American officials worry that once this line is crossed, the precedent becomes global. If Russian reserves can be seized today, what stops other countries from doing the same tomorrow? There's also the elephant in the room, the dollar. The US dollar's dominance depends on trust. Trust that assets held in Western financial systems won't be arbitrarily confiscated. Undermine that trust, and countries may accelerate efforts to move reserves elsewhere, weakening America's financial leverage over time. So while Washington publicly backs Ukraine, behind closed doors it has urged restraint. And allies like Japan are listening. If you're finding this breakdown useful so far, this is a good moment to like the video and share it with someone who cares about geopolitics beyond the headlines. It really helps get this kind of deeper analysis in front of more people. Meanwhile, Belgium finds itself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. Hosting most of Russia's frozen assets makes it the focal point of potential retaliation, legal, financial, or otherwise. Belgian officials have been unusually blunt about the risks, repeatedly asking other G7 members to step in and share responsibility. Without that backing, Belgium faces a stark choice: move forward and absorb the exposure or slow walk the plan, and risk undermining Europe's credibility. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has made her position clear. She argues that Russia's invasion represents such a profound breach of international norms that extraordinary measures are justified. From her perspective, failing to act would reward aggression and leave Ukraine fighting with one hand tied behind its back. But resolve doesn't erase consequences. By pressing ahead without full G7 support, Europe risks isolating itself. Instead of a unified Western response, the world now sees hesitation, disagreement, and internal fault lines. That perception matters, not just for Russia, but for countries watching from the sidelines, weighing which rules still apply and which can be bent under pressure. This brings us to the deeper issue at play: precedent. Sovereign assets have long been considered off-limits precisely because global finance relies on mutual restraint. Once that barrier is broken, it doesn't just affect Russia. It affects every country that holds reserves abroad, including US allies. That's why nations across Asia, the Middle East, and the Global South are watching closely. Not because they support Russia, but because they're asking a simple question. Could this happen to us one day? From Moscow's perspective, the message is equally clear. Russia has already warned that confiscation would be treated as economic warfare, promising retaliation through courts, counter-sanctions, or asymmetric responses. And as long as Europe stands more exposed than its partners, those threats carry weight. At this point, I'm curious where you stand on this. Do you think using frozen Russian assets is justified under the circumstances, or does it open a door that should never be opened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is one of those issues where reasonable people genuinely disagree. So where does this leave the EU? The most likely path forward is compromise. Rather than touching the principle itself, Europe may focus on using only the interest generated by the assets. That approach reduces legal risk while still providing billions in support to Ukraine. It's less dramatic, but far safer. At the same time, European diplomats will continue pressing Washington and Tokyo, searching for legal frameworks or political assurances that could bring them back into the fold. Without that broader buy-in, the plan remains fragile. And through all of this, Ukraine remains the central concern. Every delay, every disagreement, translates into real consequences on the ground. European leaders know this, and that's why the pressure to act hasn't gone away, even as the risks mount. What started as a financial solution has become a stress test for the Western alliance. It's testing unity, legal norms, and the limits of economic power in a world that's no longer as neatly aligned as it once was. Whether Europe ultimately moves forward or pulls back, one thing is clear: the era of easy consensus is over. The decisions being made now will shape not just the future of Ukraine, but the rules of global finance for decades to come. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future deep dives like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.